She was just a girl with a flyer, until 3 officers crossed the line, but they never expected who would step in. Watch to the end. It's not what you think. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. The morning sun had just begun to rise over Los Angeles, painting the city in a haze of gold as it peaked between the high-rises and drifted down onto a quieter neighborhood far from the chaos of downtown. Nestled between a dusty bookstore and a shuttered hardware shop sat a small corner cafe, plain, unassuming, and easy to miss. Inside, the clinking of utensils and the smell of fried eggs and brewed coffee filled the air. A radio played low jazz from behind the counter. The city was waking up, but in here, time seemed to move slower. At a table near the window, 2 massive men sat with their heads down beneath baseball caps. One wore a gray hoodie, the other a plain white t-shirt stretched across broad shoulders. They didn't draw attention. In fact, they did everything possible not to. But anyone who looked a little closer would recognize them in an instant. John Cena and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. 2 titans of entertainment and athletics, sitting quietly and eating breakfast like any regular customer. John stabbed his fork into his eggs with practiced ease. You ever notice how the best food is always in these hole-in-the-wall diners? He asked without looking up. Dwayne sipped his black coffee. You only think that because nobody's put your face on the wall yet. John smirked. Exactly why I love this place. They chuckled, their rare moment of peace uninterrupted by fans or flashing cameras. It was one of the few perks of being up before the rest of the world. But then, something outside the window caught John's eye. He straightened slightly, his brow furrowing as he gazed across the street. A young girl, maybe 13, stood confidently on the corner near a lamppost. She wore a bright yellow t-shirt with the words, "Give them a second chance," written across the front. Her curly black hair was tied into a neat ponytail, and she held a stack of flyers in one hand. She wasn't shouting, wasn't chasing people. She simply extended a flyer with a soft smile to each passerby. Some ignored her, some took the paper politely. "That kid," John said, elbow resting on the table as he watched her. "She's working harder than most adults I know." Dwayne turned to look. "That's passion," he said. "She believes in something. You can see it." The girl's name was Maya Daniels. Her mother ran a tiny animal rescue shelter on the south side of the city. They'd lost funding months ago after budget cuts. Donations had dried up. Maya wasn't doing this for school credit or recognition. She simply wanted to help save the animals. If no one else would fight for them, she would. Across the street, 3 uniformed LAPD officers leaned against their cruiser. Officers Whitman, Connors, and Reese. All 3 white men in their 40s. They had served long enough to become jaded, bitter, and comfortable with pushing the boundaries of authority. Their eyes landed on Maya with suspicion. Whitman snorted. "Look at that. Another one of them trying to play innocent. Bet she's pushing something in those flyers." Connors grinned. "Yeah, or maybe she's casing the place, scouting for someone." Reese spat onto the pavement. "Either way, time to clear the street." They began walking toward her, boots pounding the concrete like warning drums. Maya saw them and took a small step back, but quickly steadied herself. She'd been taught to be respectful, to remain calm, to always show deference, even if it was never returned. "Good morning, officers," she said, offering one of her flyers with a nervous smile. Whitman stopped in front of her. He didn't take the paper. He slapped it from her hand. "You think this is some kind of joke?" he asked harshly. Maya blinked, taken aback. "I'm just trying to help animals, sir. My mom..." I don't give a damn about your mom, Connors cut in. You're loitering. That's against the law. It's not loitering if she's moving, said a woman walking past. She's handing out papers. Move along, lady, Reese snapped. This isn't your concern. Inside the cafe, John and Dwayne had stopped eating. The mood shifted. John set down his fork. Dwayne leaned forward, watching closely. Outside, Whitman stepped closer to Maya. You got anything in that bag, sweetheart? He asked with a sick grin. Or maybe under your shirt. Maya's breath caught. I don't have anything, I swear. Sure you don't, Connors said. You people always say that. Then we find something in your shoes. You people? Maya echoed, stunned. Reese leaned down. Yeah. Girls like you don't hang out on these corners unless there's a reason. I live here, she cried. Shut up and show us your pockets, Whitman demanded, or maybe we'll check under that shirt for you. No, she cried, stepping back. You can't do that. I have rights. Oh, she's resisting, Connors sneered. Whitman suddenly lifted a less lethal shotgun from the patrol car and aimed it at her legs. John stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. I said, get on the ground, Whitman barked, finger on the trigger. No, no, please, Maya said, trembling. The blast came a second later. A rubber bullet struck her in the thigh. She screamed and collapsed, clutching her leg. Gasps exploded from the growing crowd. Someone shouted. Phones were raised. By the time Whitman lowered the weapon, John and Dwayne were already outside. You, John's voice boomed. Step away from her, now. The officers froze. Connors narrowed his eyes. This isn't your business. It is now, Dwayne said, moving next to John. You just shot a child. Back off, Hollywood, Reese growled. This is police protocol. No, John said, his voice full of steel. This is cowardice. Whitman sneered. She resisted. We had grounds. No, you had power, Dwayne interrupted, and you used it on a kid. You want someone your size? I'm standing right here. The crowd had grown. More bystanders gathered. Cameras rolled. Someone whispered, Is that John Cena? The Rock? Tension thickened like smog. Whitman suddenly reached for his taser. John moved instantly, intercepting the motion, wrenching the taser from his hands and flinging it across the street. Connors tried to move in but was stopped cold by Dwayne, who shoved him back against the cruiser. Reese raised a baton, but John closed the distance, knocked it free, and stepped between him and Maya. Cheers rang out. World Star, someone yelled. You're all done, another shouted. Whitman, Connors, and Reese backed away, red-faced, humiliated, disarmed. Sirens approached. Backup arrived. 2 younger officers and a patrol sergeant, a man named Carter. What the hell happened here? He asked, stepping out. John pointed. Those 3 shot her with a rubber bullet for handing out flyers. Carter looked down at Maya, who whimpered on the ground, blood pooling beneath her torn jeans. She's a child, Dwayne added, and they nearly shattered her leg. Carter turned towards the 3 officers. Badges, now. Sir, Whitman began, now. As they hesitated, Carter added, You're all officially suspended pending investigation. Touch your weapons again, and I swear I'll cuff you myself. Maya's mother arrived minutes later, collapsing beside her daughter in tears. John and Dwayne stood silently nearby, watching as EMTs gently lifted Maya onto a stretcher. Her eyes found theirs as she was wheeled into the ambulance. Thank you, she whispered, tears on her cheeks. John crouched beside her. You did nothing wrong, he said softly, and we're not letting this go. The ambulance doors closed, the sirens wailed again. Back at the scene, Sergeant Carter looked at the growing crowd, the phones still recording, the blood-stained flyer lying on the concrete. He turned to John and Dwayne. "We're gonna need statements." "You'll get them," Dwayne replied. "And so will the world," John added. The ambulance disappeared into the distance, its sirens echoing through the streets as the crowd slowly began to disperse. But the energy hanging in the air refused to settle. The sidewalk was littered with flyers, streaks of blood marking the concrete like a silent indictment. The mood was no longer confusion. It was outrage. People weren't just watching now. They were talking, recording, organizing. Something had shifted, and no one felt it more than the 3 officers standing stripped of their weapons and badges, glaring silently as they were placed in separate police cruisers for transport. John and Dwayne remained at the scene, their presence steady as anchors in the chaos. Sergeant Carter approached them with a clipboard in hand. "I'll need your statements," he said, not with suspicion, but with weight, as if the truth they held could tilt everything. "You'll get every detail," Dwayne assured him. John glanced at the nearby phone cameras still recording, and so will everyone else. By the time the footage from that morning reached the internet, it spread like wildfire. TikTok videos with bold captions like "Real heroes don't wear badges" began trending. Twitter exploded with hashtags #JusticeForMaya and #StandWithTruth. Within 2 hours, the story was on the local news. By evening, it had reached national headlines. Maya Daniels, 13 years old, shot in the leg with a rubber bullet while handing out animal shelter flyers by officers of the LAPD. The public reaction was swift and ferocious. Protests sparked downtown. Candlelight vigils formed near City Hall. Civil rights lawyers took to television interviews. It wasn't just about Maya anymore. Her pain had torn open a wound the city could no longer pretend wasn't there. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Maya lay in a recovery room, her thigh bandaged, her eyes heavy from painkillers. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand in both of hers. "You didn't deserve this." "Baby," she whispered through tears, "you were just trying to do good." Maya blinked slowly, her voice barely audible. "They looked at me like I was nothing." Her mother stroked her hair. "No, baby, you're everything." Across town, John and Dwayne had declined all interview requests. They weren't interested in press conferences. They sat instead in the small lobby of Maya's mother's animal shelter, where volunteers were just beginning to react to the wave of attention pouring in. A volunteer ran inside, breathless. The phones haven't stopped ringing. Someone from Channel 5 just offered to do a full segment on the shelter. And donations. Dwayne stood slowly glancing around the modest space. The shelves were half empty, the walls worn, but there was warmth here. "We'll help you get what you need," he said. "But first, we make sure what happened to Maya doesn't get ignored." John nodded, looking at a framed photo of Maya on the front desk standing with 2 puppies in her arms. "We're not going anywhere." A knock at the door drew their attention. A woman in a dark gray blazer stood there holding a notepad. She introduced herself as Carla Benton, civil rights attorney. "I saw the footage," she said softly. "I saw how they handled that child. If you're ready to take action, I'm ready to represent her." Maya's mother hesitated, her eyes red but focused. "I just want her safe." Carla nodded. "Then we start with accountability." In the following days, the city of Los Angeles turned into a boiling pot of tension and momentum. The mayor was pressed into a public statement condemning the use of excessive force on a minor. The chief of police announced that the department would conduct an internal investigation, but few trusted that it would be enough. Dozens of citizens began stepping forward, sharing their own stories of being harassed by the same 3 officers. A teenager recounted how Whitman accused him of loitering while waiting for a ride. A woman described how Reese threatened to cite her for disorderly conduct for speaking Spanish to her son. A small business owner claimed Connors had stopped and frisked his 16-year-old niece outside their store. The pattern was clear, and now it had a face. A child's face. Maya's. At the shelter, John and Dwayne took shifts helping organize donations and personally thanking volunteers. In between, they coordinated with Carla, gathering video footage, witness statements, and medical records. One afternoon, as John stacked bags of dog food, he paused, noticing Maya slowly walking in on crutches. The room went silent. Volunteers stopped what they were doing. Maya looked nervous, unsure if she should be there. Her mother stood behind her, gently supporting her elbow. John walked over, crouched down to her level, and smiled. "Glad to see you back on your feet." Maya gave a shy smile. "It still hurts a lot." Dwayne appeared beside them, holding a small beagle puppy in his arms. "This little guy missed you, and he's been trying to eat my shoe since I picked him up." Maya's smile widened as she took the puppy carefully into her arms. For a moment, the heaviness in the room lifted. People laughed. They exhaled. It felt almost normal. But the fight wasn't over. That evening, Carla held a community meeting inside the shelter. Folding chairs were set up. Cameras from local outlets were allowed in with limitations. John and Dwayne stood at the back, quietly observing as Carla stepped up to the front. "We are officially preparing to file a federal civil rights lawsuit against the officers involved," she announced, "and potentially the department itself, pending what we uncover." She explained the gravity of what happened and the significance of the public attention. "This isn't just about one act of violence. This is about a system that let it happen and expected no one to notice." Maya sat beside her mother, silently listening. Her eyes flicked around the room. She wasn't used to attention, but now the attention meant something. These people weren't just watching. They were standing with her. After the meeting, Maya approached John and Dwayne quietly. "Thank you," she said again, "for everything." John smiled. "You don't have to thank us. You stood your ground. You reminded people that one voice is enough to shake the silence," Dwayne added, "and you did it without ever raising your voice. That's strength." Maya looked down at the crutches under her arms, then back at them. "I want to keep speaking. I want people to know what really happened." Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, proud but protective. "Are you sure, baby? This could get big." Maya nodded. "I'm not afraid anymore." "Then we'll be beside you every step of the way," John said, "from the sidewalk where it began to wherever this leads next." Outside in the parking lot, cameras waited, but for the first time, Maya didn't look away. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and stepped toward the light. Maya sat quietly in the back seat of the car, watching the buildings of Los Angeles pass by in a blur. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. Up front, John drove while Dwayne navigated with one hand, the other resting on his knee. They were headed to the city council building where Maya had been invited to speak. The invitation had come quickly, too quickly, and Carla Benton, their attorney, had warned them that not everyone inside would be happy to see her. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a test of public pressure, of courage, of Maya herself. But she didn't shrink from it. Her leg was still sore and wrapped under her jeans. She walked with a crutch now, but there was a steeliness in her gaze that hadn't been there before. She wasn't just a girl handing out flyers anymore. She was a voice people were starting to follow. When they arrived, the steps of the council building were packed. Protesters held signs. News crews shouted questions. Police were stationed along the edges of the crowd, trying to contain the energy that surged like a wave. One sign read, "We believe Maya." Another said, "Protect kids, not power." As Maya stepped from the car, the shouting faded. It wasn't silence, but it felt like it. All eyes turned to her. The cameras didn't frighten her now. She didn't flinch. With John on one side and Dwayne on the other, she walked up the steps as the crowd parted, a path opening in front of her like ripples in water. Inside, the council chamber was already full. Reporters lined the back wall, city officials sat behind microphones, many looking tense, others avoiding eye contact altogether. Maya sat near the front, flanked by her mother and Carla. John and Dwayne remained at the back, arms crossed, silent but present. When her name was called, Maya stood slowly and approached the podium. The murmuring in the room faded. Lights focused on her. Her heart pounded in her ears, but she kept her chin high. "My name is Maya Daniels. I'm 13 years old. I live in South LA. I love animals. I believe in kindness. And I believe people should be treated fairly no matter what they look like." She paused for a moment, the silence thick with attention. "Last week, I was handing out flyers to help my mom's shelter. That's all I was doing. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't causing trouble. But 3 police officers decided that wasn't enough. They didn't ask me what I was doing. They told me I looked suspicious. They said I might have drugs. They told me to strip. And when I didn't, they shot me in the leg with a rubber bullet." A few gasps escaped the room. One council member shifted uncomfortably. Another lowered their gaze. Maya's voice remained steady. "I've always been told that if I do the right thing, if I speak politely, if I follow the rules, I'll be safe. That wasn't true. I did all those things, but they saw my skin and decided I was dangerous. I was just a kid with a flyer. But to them, I was a threat." Her hands gripped the sides of the podium. "I'm not here to make anyone feel bad. I'm here because I don't want what happened to me to happen to someone else. I want kids like me to be able to walk outside without fear. I want police officers to protect, not attack. I want justice. For me. For others who didn't get to speak. For those still afraid to." When she finished, the room didn't erupt. It didn't clap immediately. There was a long pause, a stillness. And then one council member stood, another followed. The applause began slowly, then built. The room stood. Reporters lowered their cameras. No one interrupted. No one dismissed her. In that moment, her voice had filled a space that had long ignored people like her. Outside, as they exited the building through a side door, reporters swarmed, but John and Dwayne shielded her path. She didn't stop. She didn't need to. She had said what needed saying. Back at the shelter, Maya returned to a very different space than the one she had known before. The floors were clean. The walls had been repainted. Volunteers bustled in and out. New crates, supplies, and food bags lined the back room. Donations from around the country had poured in. One corner of the shelter had been turned into a small classroom where children from the neighborhood could come to learn about animals, empathy, and civil rights. Maya's mother stood at the center of it all, holding a clipboard and trying not to cry as she watched her daughter walk in. "You did it," she whispered. Maya smiled. "We did it." A new mural had appeared on the side of the building. It showed Maya standing tall, a flyer in her hand. Behind her stood dozens of animals, and in the background, silhouettes of John and Dwayne stood like guardians, towering protectors in the light. Above it were the words, "Hope has a name." Maya stared at it, stunned. "Is that me?" "That's everything you stood for," John said with a quiet smile. "That's everything we stood for," Maya replied. That evening, the shelter hosted a candlelight vigil. Hundreds of people came. Some brought pets, others carried signs. Maya stood at the front, a microphone in her hand. Her voice was no longer timid. "We all deserve to feel safe," she said. "We all deserve to be treated like we matter. I don't want to live in a city where a kid with a dream becomes a target. I want to live in a place where people stand up for each other, where kindness isn't seen as weakness." The crowd raised candles to gather a wave of soft light across the night. Afterward, as the last people drifted away and the candles burned low, Maya stood with John and Dwayne. She looked up at them. Will it last? The change? John crouched beside her. Change doesn't happen in a day. But what you started, that's real. And it's not going anywhere. Dwayne added, as long as you keep speaking, people will listen. You're stronger than most adults I know. Maya smiled, not out of pride, but from peace. She had been hurt, but she had been heard, and now the silence had been broken. 2 weeks had passed since Maya's speech before the city council, and yet the echo of her words still rippled across Los Angeles. Her story hadn't faded like so many others in the fast-paced media cycle. It had grown louder. Videos of her testimony were shared by celebrities, activists, and even members of Congress. The mural on the side of the shelter had become a city landmark, with people traveling from across the state just to take a photo beside it. But for Maya, the days hadn't returned to normal. There were still interviews, letters from children around the country, and meetings with local groups who wanted her to speak. She remained humble, unsure of why the world cared so much, but deep down, she knew it was never just about her. One afternoon, as she sat in the shelter classroom helping a young boy write a flyer about adopting a senior dog, her mother stepped into the room holding a letter. Maya opened it carefully. It was from the Department of Justice. They had launched a full investigation into the LAPD's practices related to use of force, racial profiling, and community misconduct. Carla Benton confirmed it minutes later with a phone call. "This is real, Maya. They're watching now. They can't bury it." Around the same time, Internal Affairs summoned officers Whitman, Connors, and Reese for a final round of questioning. Each sat separately in stark white rooms, facing investigators with thick files and cold eyes. Whitman stayed silent, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Connors tried to deflect, claiming they followed protocol. But Reese broke. He confessed to everything. The language, the intimidation, the threats. He admitted they had targeted Maya because of how she looked and where she stood. His statement was enough to seal the outcome. All three were terminated from the department. Their records marked for misconduct and violation of civil rights. Meanwhile, Carla prepared the federal civil rights lawsuit. She worked with the ACLU, collected witness statements, and ensured every step was documented. "We're not settling quietly," she told Maya's family. "This case will define what happens next, not just in LA, but everywhere." At the shelter, changes continued. They expanded the facility with donations. A local tech company installed a new security system. Law students volunteered on weekends to help run youth advocacy workshops. Maya stood at the center of it all, not as a symbol, but as a leader. One day, she arrived to find a group of younger kids waiting outside the classroom with their parents. They had come to hear her speak. She stepped inside, placed her notes on the table, and began telling her story not as a victim, but as a survivor, as someone who found strength when the world tried to silence her. That evening, John and Dwayne returned to the shelter unannounced. Maya greeted them at the gate with a hug. "You guys still show up," she said. "You still keep going. Dwayne replied. You think we'd stop now? John added. You started something too important. Inside the shelter, Maya's mother served tea while the men talked with Carla about next steps. The lawsuit is moving forward, she explained. The city tried to push mediation, but we refused. This needs to be public. It needs to be loud. Dwayne nodded. We'll back it all the way. John looked toward Maya, who was sitting in the corner with a rescued dog in her lap. What you said that day changed something he told her. People listen now. They think. They ask questions. You started a movement. Maya shook her head gently. I just told the truth. That's all it takes sometimes, Dwayne said. The next morning, the city of Los Angeles held a press conference outside the courthouse. A massive crowd had gathered. Reporters from every major network aimed cameras toward the podium. Carla Benton stood tall, flanked by Maya, her mother John Dwayne, and volunteers from the shelter. We are filing a federal civil rights lawsuit, she announced into the microphones. Against the 3 former officers and against the city for its failure to address years of complaints and racial targeting. The cameras flashed, questions flew, but Carla remained focused. Maya stepped forward when Carla finished. Her voice was soft but clear. I didn't ask for any of this, she said, but it happened. And I'm not going to pretend it didn't. I got hurt for trying to help. But now I'm going to use my voice to make sure it doesn't happen again. Not to me, not to anyone. The crowd erupted in applause. Inside the LAPD headquarters, the chief addressed his department in a closed meeting. The officers involved have disgraced their uniforms. We must rebuild trust and transparency. Effective immediately training programs on racial bias will be overhauled. Review boards will include civilian voices. In neighborhoods across the city, conversations changed. Schools discussed Maya's story in classrooms. Parents brought their children to the shelter to meet her. A local university offered her a future scholarship. But Maya didn't care about fame or attention. She cared about the animals, about kids like her, about fairness. One quiet afternoon, months after it all began, Maya sat on the same street corner where she had once stood with her flyers. This time, she wasn't alone. Children stood beside her holding signs that read, "Be kind," "Protect all," "Stand for truth." Her mother stood nearby passing out water. A television crew filmed the moment, but stayed at a respectful distance. Maya looked around at the people beside her and smiled. This was never just about what happened that day. It was about what could happen next. John stood across the street beside Dwayne watching the scene unfold. They didn't need to intervene. They had helped her get here. Now she walked on her own, strong, brave, unshaken. The city hadn't just watched justice unfold. It had changed because of it. And in the heart of that change stood a girl who once just wanted to save a few animals. Now she had saved far more than that. One voice can spark a movement. If this story moved you, don't stay silent. Like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to see it.